This podcast is sponsored by eBay Canada. eBay Canada is here to help. They've been supporting Canadian small business retailers for 25 years and have recently launched their Up and Running program to meet an urgent need to get business online today. New business sellers can get a free e-commerce store for 90 days when they visit ebay.ca/upandrunning.
It's Vancouver's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
Hi, this is Angela Fay here from Canada's Podcast. I am super excited to have Peter Legge from Canadawide Media with us here today. Now, if you're in the publishing industry or in British Columbia, Peter really needs no introduction. He's received the Order of BC, which is the highest, one of the highest business achievement awards in Canada. But instead of bragging a little bit about him, I just want to jump straight in and say, hi, Peter, welcome to Canada's Podcast.
Hi, Angela, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you. Thanks
Absolutely.
for persevering to do this.
Well, we're going to have a little bit of fun, but first of all, let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey. Can you give us, I realize it's long and lengthy, but can you give us a snapshot?
I used to be general sales manager of a radio station in Langley, CJJC. I thought I was doing a pretty good job, and obviously I wasn't. So the owner fired me. He had philosophical and differences and what have you. And so the drive home to my house was a good 45 or 50 minutes before the freeway was in. And I had to face my wife and tell her I just got fired. So I drove as slowly as I could home, figuring, what am I going to say? What is she going to say? What's going to end up here? Pulled into the driveway, walked in the back door. She said, oh, good day today? I said, well, it was a little different. Let's have a glass of wine. I'll get changed, and then we'll talk about it. So we did that, and a glass of wine, and she said, well, what's up? She knew something was wrong. And I said, I got fired today. Silence. Not a word. Nothing. She said nothing. And then she said, after a good 4 or 5 minutes, that's good. That is very good. You shouldn't be working for somebody else. You're the best salesman. You got a positive attitude. You've got enthusiasm. You can do anything you set your mind to. So here's what I want you to do tomorrow. When you get up, shower, shine your shoes, put on a suit and tie, and go out there and find a business that you can manage and you can run and make a career of. That's how she dealt with it.
Wow. Nothing
could have been better. So the next morning I got up and I heard of a chap named Al Davidson. You've probably heard of Al Davidson, the greatest sportscaster in Canada. Used to work for CKNW in New Westminster. And he had a magazine called Al Davidson's This Week that went bankrupt the day before I got fired.
Wow.
So I phoned him and I said, Al, you want to have lunch? Let's chat about it. He said, sure, okay. So during that lunch, that 2-hour lunch, I ended up buying that magazine, Al Davidson's This Week, $76,000. I didn't have 76 cents, but he said, I printed next week's magazine, so you really take over in 2 weeks, which is perfect. And we changed the name from Al Davidson's This Week magazine to TV Week magazine. We still have TV Week 45 years later. It's still our #1 magazine, both in gross dollars and net dollars, and has about 25,000 paid circulation a week. And it helped us build the company that's called Canadawide Media today.
And you have a number of publications in our portfolio. Could we rattle off a top few just for familiarity?
Yes, we have a BC Business Magazine. We have Award Magazine for the construction business across Canada. We own the Western Living Magazine, Western Living Condo, Vancouver Magazine, BC Business, I mentioned that. And we do a lot of custom publishing for organizations in Western Canada. And we love it. You know, it's not easy. No business is really easy. We haven't made money every single year, but we've made money most years. And we anticipate that maybe next year could be even more challenging than this year. But that's what we do. And everything is published under Canadawide Media.
Awesome. And you know, we're both in the media business, so we can talk a little bit about that in a moment. But you also launched a career as a speaker and an author on the back of this business.
Yeah, that actually started in high school. I went to junior high school in New Westminster, called Vincent Massey Junior High School, named after one of our lieutenant governors. And I was asked to give the address to the graduating students going from junior high to senior high. Never done it before, and I loved it. They seemed to love it too. And so I really started there in grade 9. And then in high school, I was emceeing all the meetings and all the audience participation things that they did there. And I got hooked by it. So that's how I started.
It's a bit addicting. Well, and I confess that I've never actually been in an audience when you were speaking, but I've watched your videos, and I confess I have a very interesting story to tell you. I am in the process of reading one of your books. Oh, wait, can we see it? Oh, we can't see it. This is the Make Your Life a Masterpiece.
Oh,
book.
yeah.
And, I mentioned earlier, I know I started getting to know you, Peter, a little bit just by reading your books. And I've read The Power of Tact, which if you haven't read it before, it is a timeless piece. Tact is it's something that's never taught in schools. But it is probably one soft skill that I think everybody should have. So definitely on my recommended reading list. But the Make Your Life a Masterpiece, this is an odd thing that happened to me 2 weeks ago, is I'm reading your list of books that you've published. And the one, just by the title, Make Your Life a Masterpiece, jumped out at me. I thought, I must get my hands on that book before I, interview Peter. And I walk over, I have a shelf of business books in my office. And I walked over to that bookshelf just for lunch one day, and I looked, and in front of me on that bookshelf was your book. I did not put it there. I asked around my office to say who put it there, and I'm pretty sure that maybe somebody from your organization snuck it in there so I could read. But it was a very serendipitous. And I've got to say, if you haven't already read it, Peter, honestly, anytime I see a hotel bar of soap now for the rest of my life, I'm going to think of you and laugh.
Okay. Well,
and that's an inside joke, right?
Yes.
For those.
Well, doing the books is great fun. I'm not a great writer, but I have a great editor who can take my ideas and dreams and make something out of it. And it takes about a year from the initial dream of what the book's going to be about to the publication. It takes about a year. So
now, do you publish? Do you publish other people's books as well?
We have done, but we're not known for that.
We're not known for that. Okay.
The printing of my books is done by Friesens in Winnipeg, or south of Winnipeg.
Okay. Neat.
And yeah, you gotta know that business. But the writing of the books, once I get the idea of what I'd like to write about, and then I get a name, I write to the name and what the content is. So my latest book just came out a couple of weeks ago called Under the Influence. And it started with, I was writing my life story, and I called it, What's Your Story? So you in your life have got 100 stories that have. So as I was writing along, it came on, I said, oh, I don't like that. We'll call it influence. And then we kept writing, and it's called Under the Influence. So what it is your associations, the things that you do, the people that you meet, the places that you go, who you speak for, who you associate with, what influences you, makes you who you are today. That's what it's called, Under the Influence.
I like it. Well, I'll put that on my list too. Can we talk just for a few moments, Peter? What do you see are the trends happening in the media industry today, and maybe specifically in publishing, and or future trends in the next, say, decade, 5 years down, or decade?
Well, certainly the digital platform in various forms is going to take over, if it hasn't already taken over. But, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, in my 45 years, we've had all kinds of things. There were no cell phones 45 years ago. There were all sorts of things that are here today, and we're still publishing more magazines today than we've done so. In fact, we were just talking to Simon Fraser University yesterday about a magazine for that university. Well, they're all young people. Why wouldn't they go digital? Now, they are doing digital, but they want a product that people can have, put on their shelves, read tomorrow, next week, and next year. So I think media, probably the printed word in terms of newspapers, will suffer more than we will at the moment. We've just published the last edition of BC Business. It's over 100 pages. How is that possible? I don't know, but it is. Because people want to read good writers, they want to read good stories, good illustrations, and they really want to read to learn how they can be better at what they do, what they can do better at their company. It doesn't have to be a media company. It could be anything. What can you do? How do you become a better person at whatever your career path is? Because you can do that. I can be better today and better tomorrow and better next week than I was yesterday.
And how do you feel about this kind of blow up world that we're in? I'll call it the COVID coaster, or economically, some people are suggesting we're in a recession. Could you offer both some pragmatic advice and perhaps some inspiration for Canadian entrepreneurs?
Well, first of all, it would be very insensitive of me not to say that I feel for those families who have been affected the most by the loss of their loved ones, whether it's their father or their mother or even their children, and they don't understand why some people can get well and some people get it and don't get well. So allow me to say that to your audience.
Absolutely.
I'm not insensitive to that.
Thank you.
I've got 3 daughters of my own and 7 grandkids, and God forbid something would ever happen to them. The big question probably is, where did this really all come from? Where did this COVID come from? And I'm not sure anyone really knows for sure. But in British Columbia, our minister is doing an incredible job, as painful as it is for a lot of businesses, is doing an incredible job of keeping the number of cases down to a minimum. I won't say she's Canada or best in North America, but she's got to be up there in the top 4 or 5. She's done an absolutely fabulous job. I think I do believe what the Bible says, this too will pass. This too will pass. And how will it pass will be dependent on what rules you're prepared to follow, which some people in the United States are not following, and there's a resurgence to this disease. So I'm pretty faithful on my pool. I need to be told by my staff, keep 6 feet away, Pete, keep 6 feet away. I'm not good at that, but I don't mind if they yell at me and tell me to do that. They're doing it for their safety and mine. So this too will pass. How do we come out of it? It might not pass. There might be some organizations and some people that are going to have to shift their career path, shift their whatever they're doing now to earn living, particularly if it's their own business. That's a little dodgy to talk about. We have done okay, and we're doing okay. We've never made a fortune, so I'm okay with what we're doing. And the government has certainly helped. I really appreciate the government subsidies for some of our staff and some of our freelancers, and hope that goes on for as long as it's feasible. Now that's a long way of saying I don't really know any more than how we're going to get out of it. But we have got to take Bonnie's rules and regulations and take them very seriously and apply them to our spouses and our children and our staff and those people we associate with, so that we are not going to get infected or infect other people with something that we don't know we have.
Access eBay's 170 plus million buyers around the world. With eBay Canada, you can stay local, sell global, and power up. That's ebay.ca/up and running. Offer is open until August the 22nd.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. That's probably some of the most pragmatic advice, is accept the guidance on, some medical expertise. One of the things I'm quite shocked about so far is just how widespread the impact is, whether someone is actually dealing with personal or family health issues, or things are being delayed because of circumstances, or the impact in business. And really, we're a business podcast. So one thing I haven't seen yet, and perhaps because we're still partially in crisis mode and we're not yet in recovery mode, but we're just coming out of that, right? We're just starting to reintroduce inspiration for those that have lived through hard times before would be very welcome, Peter. If you could offer, a little bit of hope, some encouragement for entrepreneurs who are thinking, do I wind up? Do I, put that behind me and say that was a pre-COVID type business, or starting something new, or, pivoting or growth? What, from your experience, what could you share at this time?
Well, for me, obviously, you've got to be positive.
Yes.
And you've got to be enthusiastic. And you've got to say to yourself, this too will pass. Somehow we'll get through this. It might not be the business you're in today. It might be a new business or a new venture, because your business could be affected. For example, a buddy of mine runs Jimmy Patterson's radio stations. I think he's got 47 of them. He runs them out of Kamloops. And I was asking him about business, and he said, well, the outdoor, Jimmy owns all the outdoors in BC, certainly in Vancouver. He says, they're down 75%. I said, why on earth would outdoors be out 75%? He said, because there's no cars on the road. We buy outdoor advertising. The people in the cars. It never even dawned on me. So that will come back, but it will take time as the increase, the people will advertise outdoors. So it's going to be different for other people. Your life is not over. Okay, we haven't. Many of us haven't died. Most of us haven't died. If we're married, and I'm very happily married, 52 years, to a woman who loves me dearly and encourages me every single day, because I need encouragement. People need encouragement. They need to know that they're cared for and they're loved, and this will pass, and we can get through it. It'll take some time. It may take some challenges. We may have to borrow some money from mom and dad. We may have to remortgage our house. Whatever we have to do, we do.
Right. Mom, Dad, are you listening? Peter said you can lend me some money.
Yes, they can. If you ask them nicely, I'm sure that
they might. They might. Peter, let's talk a little bit about doing business generally in BC and in Canada. We have a privilege that we do have most of our listeners are Canadian, but we have a lot of international companies looking at doing business. And our goal is to be, the #1 essential podcast medium for Canadian entrepreneurs and for international companies looking at doing business in Canada. So I'm hoping you can provide some insight on what you see as opportunities or challenges, BC specifically, and maybe across Canada.
Well, I'm basically in two businesses. One is the media business, and I guess the other is a media business. It's a speaking business. In speaking, I've done more podcasts and Zooms in the last 3 months than I've done in the last 30 years. Which is wonderful. I love it. I'm
glad we're on the list.
I don't have to get on a plane, don't have to stay in a hotel and all that kind of stuff. But it's going to be challenging. I don't want to suggest it's not going to be challenging. And we're going to have to work harder and ask more questions. When I'm speaking to a sales group, I say, I don't actually mean this, but I do mean this. So I'll go up to an attractive lady like you, and I'll say, will you marry me? And you'll say, no. Then I say, why? And you say, you're already married. Then I say, if I wasn't married, would you marry me? And you might say, yes. So you've gone from no to yes in less than 45 seconds. Doesn't mean we're going to get married and all that kind of stuff. But I'm saying, ask the question, would you consider this proposal? No. Most people won't say why. Well, why wouldn't you consider? Well, it's too expensive. Oh, help me understand. How do you mean it's too expensive?
Nice.
$50,000. and I've only got 35. So then you say, are you saying to me that you'd buy this proposal for $35,000? If they say yes, then you have to quickly say, can I sell this proposal for $35,000? Can I make enough changes in this proposal that I can still make a profit of $35,000? And 9 times out of 10, you can. So it's conversational. Everything is conversational.
So you've just identified something for me in this podcast that I have found it very difficult to put my finger on. And we often get challenged with the different cultures between, particularly American and Canadian cultures, because we share the same border. And, you know, people will say to me, the Americans take more risks. They take, you know, they're more entrepreneurial. They say yes more to conversations. But suddenly you've just pinpointed that we're super conservative here in Canada. That's my experience. And I would love to get your insight on that. But conservative doesn't necessarily mean any lack of entrepreneurship or risk. It means ask me more questions.
Yes.
Right? Will you marry me? No, not in the forefront, not from the very limited pieces that I know, is kind of a tip on how to deal with Canadians, right? A little bit of ask more questions, find out more about them, get into the conversation. Do you think
if I go with a client and what exactly do you do? And I'll be shocked at how many people, 9 out of 10 people, say, no one's asked me that. What do you manufacture? What do you sell? And depending on where the conversation goes, what's your profit margin? How many sales guys do you have? How many offices do you have in Canada? People won't ask that question. And then somewhere in there you sneak in, and what do you do for advertising? Do you use newspapers, magazines, radio, television? What do you do? And they'll tell you. Are you married? Do you have children? What are their names? People will tell you pretty much most of the questions you ask them. And out of that, you form, they're probably, and you say it this way, they're probably, as I see it, there could be a way in which you and I could do business. You kind of have to answer yes to that. Yeah, there probably could. I didn't say there would be. I said there probably could. So then you have to figure out what can I do to help your business? What can I do to help you grow? What can I help you to sell more of your widgets? And if I can do that, could we do business? And you'll probably say, yeah, if you can do that. Okay, then I got to figure out how I can do that.
So let me ask the question, Peter, how can we work with Canadawide Media?
You can.
Great. What do we?
You can.
What's next on the horizon for you guys? This is a sample test line of questioning for how to deal with Canadians. But
well, I'm not sure whether you've met my EA, who is originally from the Philippines and has only been with me a few months, but is an absolute whiz in the computer digital world. And she's got me doing things that I'm not even sure I would dream about a year ago. Right. So I wouldn't do it on my own, but I'm now doing it because she guides me, directs me, and encourages me and says, don't do this, and so on and so forth. So where that will go in the next year, I don't know. But it's a lot more today than it was 6 months ago. Therefore, so it's going to be a lot bigger 6 months from now.
Well, then I'm curious, just talking about your team right now, there was everything's as at in the moment when you're at about 130 employees. How is your team coping right now? Are they all in one place? Are they remote? Are they distributed globally? What's your team makeup?
Well, it's basically great. They're all in Vancouver. We do have reps in Toronto, but they're hired reps and they have their own offices. I would say we've got 55, 60 people, and probably on a daily basis, you might have as many as 10. Very rare.
Right.
Everything is done remote.
Remotely right now.
But I believe that they're working every day, doing what they're doing. We have one magazine that I haven't seen one editor for 3 months. It's a weekly magazine.
So strange.
But the magazine gets out every single Tuesday. And they're now saying, I don't want to come back to work. I want
Right.
to stay in my house. And I'm going to have a tough job rationalizing why I should say no. And I can't think of a reason to say no. They're happier. The magazine's getting out. Audiences are
Work's getting done.
Work's getting done.
It's a real disruption, really, of some of our assumed systems of how we do business.
Yeah. And I'm a big guy. I need to look you in the eyes. I need relationships. That's how I function. But obviously they don't. There's 3 editors it's TV Week magazine. There's 3 editors, and they all work from home, not their own home, not together. Somehow they piece it all together. It comes together. It's perfect.
It is. And Peter, I confess, I'm in that bridging generation, right? I'm in that. I come from where we used to shake hands and always had a personal relationship first. I'm dealing with the fact that so many of my clients and the people I need to serve are happy with digital. And I've had a co-working space for 5 years. So it was always understood that I need that face-to-face contact. So it feels a bit odd having the first personal meeting with you over digital, but
Let me ask you
I'm
this
pretty
question.
sure.
Where do you want to take your business? Do you know where you want to take your business?
I do.
Have you got
I
it
do.
down?
You know what? I'm in a transition personally, and so I'm putting it on my hit list to come meet you in person in Vancouver. It's
Put a timeline to that. If you've got
yes,
things, or whatever 10 things you want to do, I can do this one in 3 months, and this one in a year, this one in 2 years. Write down a timeline.
absolutely. And just curious, I know none of us really know what tomorrow is going to bring, but after this podcast, what is the best way to get a hold of you, Peter?
You have a phone number, email address?
Sure. I don't have a phone number.
604-473
Yes.
0332.
And I do have your email, which is
Yep.
easy because it's peterlegge@canadawidemedia.ca. Is that right?
Yep.
Yep. Who would you love to hear from? If you had 5 people calling you in the next 2 weeks, who would you want to hear from?
What would they be phoning me about? What would they?
That's my question. If you could archetype it, who would you love to hear from?
Who would I love to hear from? Let me count. I need to think about that. You could say the obvious things, but they're not, I'd like to think about that.
And you can come back to me. It's going to be tough to say people who want you for a speaking engagement because that's not likely to happen in the short little while. But
we get phone calls basically every day for a podcast, a Zoomcast, a speech. There's less speeches, but there's a lot kind of being tentatively booked if they can get beyond 50 people in a room. And hopefully they're going to do that in the fall.
Well, and I do have an idea for why I might want to get a hold of you, but I'll leave that for another time.
Yeah.
Just going back to you, is there anything that you do, and I know you have your own reading list, is there anything in your list that you would love to share with other Canadian entrepreneurs as a reading list or a recommended source of inspiration at this time?
Well, the one question I'm asked the most is, what is the one thing I could do to be a better business person? And I said, do you read? And
Yes.
I'm amazed at how many people say no. Okay, well, starting today, you read a book a week for the rest of your life. You read a book with a yellow felt pen, and you underline those quotes, those illustrations, those stories, those aha moments, and it will absolutely change your world. You'll be a completely different person. You'll be more interesting. And people say, well, what book should I read? Well, if you're in sales, read Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. Why would I do that? Well, it was published in 1947, and it sells millions of copies even today. And it's listed in every single bookstore in North America and Great Britain. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It sold multi-millions of copies. And it gives his secrets, his 17 secrets of how you can be a better person.
That is brilliant. And again, it comes back to something that is timeless. There's some basic human principles that, we all share, that to have relationships and to deploy tact, to be optimistic and enthusiastic. I can suggest that anything on Peter's writing list is probably going to hit that mark. Me as a fan.
There's a week goes by where I don't say to Sherry, can you get these books for me? I don't know where she gets them. Or they're not necessarily for sale in the stores, but I've read this book I've read, he's quoted somebody else's book. I'd like to read that book. It could be out of print. Could take 3 or 4 weeks to get. Somehow she'll track it down, and on my desk next Monday, there'll be a book that I ordered 3 weeks ago.
Fantastic. What are you reading right now, Peter?
Well, I'm reading a guy by the name of Eric Larson, Eric Larson. I bought his book I was in Palm Springs, and I saw his first book, and I thought, I'll read that on the plane. He lives in Seattle, and he's written at least 8 books. And we're trying to get them all. It's tough to get, and I like hardcover books. I've got over 2,000 books in my library at home.
Wow.
Yeah. So I practice what I preach. He's a great writer. The book I'm reading now is on the ambassador of the United States to Berlin at the outbreak of World War II, when Hitler was in Berlin. I haven't finished it yet. Absolutely fascinating. Now, it's not 100% true, but I'm sure 99% of it's based on truth.
Absolutely. Pretty intriguing stuff.
But anything by John Maxwell, anything. You can go to any bookstore and there'll be 20 books by John Maxwell. Some of them are only $10 a book. Well, buy 10 of them and read them. Put them in your library and study them, and it will change you. It will change your thinking. It will change your forward thinking. It will change how you interact with people and what you do. And if you happen to be a speaker, it changes my speaking and what I speak about.
Absolutely. Do you have anything planned now on your speaker circuit, or is everything on hold?
Well, I've got a couple booked for the fall, and I haven't heard that they've canceled them. And so
Great.
One's in Toronto and one's in the States somewhere.
Okay. Well, if anybody's in Toronto in the States, we'll watch on your website for some speaking engagements coming up. Peter, that brings us to the end of our chat. I could probably sit and talk to you for hours, but thank you so much for joining us on Canada's podcast. I look forward to meeting you in person.
Anytime. If you're in Vancouver, anytime, lunch is on me.
I will take you up on that, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks.
This podcast is sponsored by eBay Canada. eBay Canada is powering Canadian small businesses. Go to ebay.ca/upandrunning to open your online shop.